Now, an injustice to one is truly an injustice to all. And this will be volume 1 starring Becky Hammon. As we've seen a very focused approach by the media to highlight Becky Hammon possibly being the first female head coach in the NBA. And why am I saying an injustice to one is truly an injustice to all? Is because Becky Hammon 100% is qualified to be a head coach in the NBA. But with the push for her to be the head coach, especially by the media, we're going to have to ask ourselves, how are there only 5 black head coaches in the NBA when in the last 40 years, the men who built the league make up over 70% of the players? Now, if we look at the last 40 years of just when the NBA experienced all the growth that it has up until this point, we can just say at least 400 players come into the league every year. And let's just be conservative. Let's just say 300 of those players are black players. You times that by 40 years, and then let's just be conservative again and say at least 10% of them want to be coaches. That still leaves over 1,000 guys wanting to be head coaches. And it's an issue that former players and current players have been taking notice for a while. I seen Jay Will on ESPN make a snarky remark to Stephen A. Smith of how there was such a limited amount of black head coaches in the NBA. He did it in a funny way that was kind of jokey, but serious at the same time. And then last year we seen in the bubble, the players actually put on the agenda for when they had the boycott for the league to have an initiative and checks and balances for their processes when it comes to hiring minorities in these positions. See, when there's already an issue of just hiring practices with one demographic, it's definitely going to affect another demographic. See, because with Becky Hammon, she's like the John Gruden, or should I say in basketball terms, she's sort of like an Eric Spoelstra, just a film room rat, just in there all day, every day, just studying film, studying habits. And the inner nuances of basketball is sort of like an art. It's either you know it or you don't. It doesn't matter what gender you are. But with Becky Hammon, I remember when she came into the WNBA, she played with some tough ass players on that New York Liberty team. She had Tamika Whitmore, Teresa Witherspoon, Vicki Johnson, Tira Phillips, and she was small too. So she had to kind of adjust to the physicality and understand, her footwork, her positioning, how to get to certain spots. She had to sort of manipulate the game. And I'm not surprised that she got into the coaching world. Because even in the NBA, you see players that weren't as athletic, but who had long careers because they had to find inner nuances within the NBA game to hold their position in the league. Those tend to be the best coaches. But after 2007, when she was done with the San Antonio Stars, she went straight into the film room with Pop. I mean, even before she retired from the WNBA, she had an injury. She was already going off and watching film with Popovich and his team. And what some people don't remember, because we tend not to watch Summer League like that, in her first year coaching that Vegas tournament, the Spurs end up winning the whole thing. And also keep in mind, when was the last time you ever seen the Spurs pick at the very top of the draft? I'm talking about in the last 5, 6, 7 years. So that kind of shows you her pedigree. But the NBA, especially in the last couple years, there are issues with hiring minority coaches. It may overshadow this Becky Hammon situation, because currently most minority hires are only for lame duck jobs. I mean, even when guys do a good job with limited resources, we still see them let go. We've seen Nate McMillan without Victor Oladipo for almost 2 seasons still make the playoffs, but he still ended up getting fired by the Pacers. We've seen David Fizdale get fired from the Knicks and also from the Memphis Grizzlies. Even though he got that injured riddled team into the playoffs and played a good first round matchup against the Spurs, he still was laid off. We seen Jack Vaughn in the Magic. That's another lame duck job. Brian Shaw with the Nuggets when they weren't that good. We seen Lionel Hollins with the Memphis Grizzlies. Avery Johnson with the Brooklyn Nets when all their draft picks were depleted. Keith Smart with the Sacramento Kings. Paul Silas with the Charlotte Hornets. The list goes on and on and on with the lame duck job hires. But even with those lame duck jobs, there's still a lot of coaches that still get the benefit of the doubt throughout the league. You look at Billy Donovan and the way he had 2 first-round exits back-to-back years in the playoffs in OKC. He was still allowed to coach until the end of his 6-year contract. Even though he had those 2 failed playoff appearances, and multiple failed seasons with having Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. We can also include Mike D'Antoni onto that list. I've never seen a coach who has had more talent than Mike D'Antoni and never have an NBA Finals appearance. Remember, he had that team in Phoenix that never made the finals. He almost missed the playoffs while having Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, and Steve Nash. And of course, let's not forget the Houston Rocket years, having James Harden, Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, and Russell Westbrook, and having no NBA Finals appearance to show for it. But Mike D'Antoni always gets the benefit of the doubt because he's always a top candidate for a head coaching job, especially for a team that's either playoff bound or championship bound. And we also got to look at Luke Walton. Now, Luke Walton is definitely living off his last name. How's he always able to get another job? The Laker job was a complete botch, and in Sacramento so far, it doesn't look that much different. What reputation that Luke Walton has to keep getting these jobs? Him and Mike Dunleavy Jr. must have the same hookup. Now, I gotta say, there's one minority coach that's definitely living off his last name, and he keeps getting opportunity after opportunity, and that's Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers vastly underachieved in Boston, only getting one championship, and he vastly underachieved while being the coach of the Clippers. But yet he was still able to land a top-notch job coaching the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, he's a proven coach because of that 2008 championship, but how long can he live off that reputation from 08? And another coach that was allowed to go out gracefully was Jim Boylan, the coach of the Chicago Bulls. He was completely out of touch with the players, but yet he was allowed to gracefully walk out, which is something that we don't see minority coaches, especially in lame duck job situations, get. Even though some of them have overachieved in those situations, they still don't get the grace to at least part ways with the franchise. They get the public firing treatment. Now, looking at the GM position, there's a few things funny in the light. Sam Hinkie gets praised a lot, especially by the analytical guys. This is a guy who had nothing but losing seasons and sold the art of losing to a fan base. Shit, I should even call it an art. That shit was purely disgusting. And another analytical guy who gets praised is Daryl Morey, who has no NBA Finals appearance. Now, Daryl Morey, to me, he's a guy who can make really good trade deals. He reminds me of one of those guys you've seen back in the day running on the floor in Wall Street with the paper in their hands trying to make trades. That's Daryl Morey to me. He's a very good negotiator. He does have a lot of regular season success, and he can guarantee a lot of owners to at least get the teams into the playoffs. But when it comes to winning the big one, he's still unproven. And this is where it comes to my last point, and this is where I tie in Joe Dumars. The same guys who praise Sam Hinkie and Daryl Morey for their analytics is the same guys who bash Joe Dumars. Even though Joe Dumars built a team from scratch in the 2004 Detroit Pistons, who won the NBA championship against that legendary Laker team, even with Karl Malone and Gary Payton, and Joe Dumars made the Eastern Conference Finals for 6 years in a row. He had 2 NBA Finals appearances, lost to the Spurs in Game 7. This guy is proven, but yet by those same analytical guys, praise Sam Hinkie and Daryl Morey, they bash Joe Dumars. This is something I could never understand. And Joe Dumars, for years, he had the Darko Milicic draft pick cloud hanging above his head. It's only one draft pick. You know how many GMs had messed up on multiple draft picks? But for some reason, that was held over his head for years, which I never understood because he's proven that he built a championship team and a team that contended so far down the line that they made the Eastern Conference Finals for 6 years in a row. You can say there is a slight bias, especially the way minority coaches and executives get treated, but at the end of the day, whether it's male, female, whatever culture or color skin you are, if you know the game, you know the game. And the same way the media sort of highlights Becky Hammon and her journey to being a coach in the NBA, they should highlight minority coaches in the same way because they're facing the same plight in a league that they helped build.